Hi, welcome back. My name is Tony Sage. This is Sage Dev. See, wasn't that nice and professional? I'm just going to try that out for a while. We're back at Gemini. So we have set up our infrastructure. This is day 3 of the Street Bytes development process. We've set up our development local, which is running on Lando in a container. We have our styles that we've put in place with the style guide. We set up all our linters. We have the design and a basic technical architecture for how we're developing this tool. What we're missing at this point, our next step, one, we can set up a front-end framework. Most of this is going to be driven in REST API. So we're going to call data, pull it out of the database, or we're going to call Google, but we're not going to display that. We're going to display this. So we need to set up our components. Right now, our style guide is pretty light. It is nice, but all I have is food truck card and buttons and all the nice little look and feels there. But we do still need to set up the rest of the framework, which we can set a lot of that up based on this initial design. We're not going to follow it that strict. If we were, we would design this into something like Figma. Figma is a tool. If you're not familiar with it, I guess I can open it up. So Figma is a tool you can use to design things. You can actually drop images into Figma and it'll come up with a design for you. Just for the sake of demo, I can show this. Our development team uses a lot of Figma to create new art. So they would design it in Figma, use some drag and drop and other things, and it'll come up with HTML type template, save it as a Fig file, and that can be used in AI. So you could drop that into Claude and say, I want it to look exactly like this. We're not going to do that. I don't have a paid version of Figma. I have free. And I don't really want that to be involved in this flow because it's complex. And if you don't know how to use Figma, there's its own learning curve. But today, I don't think that's going to happen. We're just going to design based on our initial demo that we had AI build for us, all of the different components. So first we need to map out what our different components are. So let's do that. Let's see. Based on that design, we have a footer, home, map, favorites, profile, dark, background, still meets style guide. We have cards with images in a carousel. Probably we could use like Slido or equivalent. Contains image, truck name, and CTA find now. So that would be this bit in the middle. So we are building individual cards. Looks like we have some filters here that are displaying cards. So we probably have in mobile, I wouldn't want that to be a carousel. I'd probably want that to be smaller cards and in some kind of a list. Maybe cards in a side-by-side. Let's see. So we have filter, CTA row with scrollable left to right. And then underneath a CTA filter view with 50-50 split cards or listing of trucks. There's a lot more complexity to this. We're just driving our design right now. So what else do we have? We have a top nav. So in there we have search bar, which is probably even its own component. We're going to just leave search bar and see what Claude does with it right now. There's a lot more complexity to what we can do there. We have a collapsible hamburger menu. That's this. That's very common. Nav under collapsible hamburger menu. I wouldn't call it a modal. We'll do it anyway. We need a main street bytes logo and a map pin icon linking two maps. Additional things we need, just while we're talking about it, we probably need a login. We're not getting into technical architecture yet, but we probably, for login, we need a login form, which is two-factor authorization. So if somebody attempts to log in, it'll send them an email and then they need to confirm. That probably also has cookie to say, keep me logged in, which is a very common use case of a cookie. If we're going to have a cookie, we probably need some, EU cookie banner. If you're not familiar with that, it's called the GDPR. See how this has the cookie bot here? That is what we're looking for. So on a site, we're going to say there's almost none. We're going to say whole US. Yeah, I'm not going to submit that. I've never been to this site before, for the record. The GDPR is actually going to require cookies be set and for you to acknowledge as a user that you're accepting those cookies to that site. This is right now in EU, but there is some legislation in California to try to force the same thing in California. It's trying to protect end users' identity, even though all it really is a string saying this is who I am. It's an ID. We're going to need a cookie to save a current user as this is your device, so you don't have to log in every time. We're also going to set this in a PHP session and maybe some Laravel equivalent of PHP session. I don't know. We're going to ask and see what it does. But more importantly, we need a GDPR banner for GDPR banner for cookie approval. Only essential cookies. No non-essential cookies. So that's essentially one CTA saying accept cookies. Because the only cookie we're going to have is going to be related to login, so you don't have to log in over and over again. Also, I think, what else do we need? We need a map page. So map page with filters. The map comes from cached Google Maps without ins need to be added based on trucks pinned locations relative to the map. So I'm not going to go too much deeper than this. We're talking a lot of different features here, and we'll get into each feature as we go. But for our style guide, we need a footer, we need cards in a carousel, we need a filter CTA row with overflow, we need a filter view that will display our trucks that are filtered. We need a header nav with search and a hamburger nav menu. I don't know what this is going to have in it. Probably just the same, maybe an about us, or Tony developed this thing. I don't know. So we're going to walk through this with AI. We have our little thing here. If we wanted this to be more granular, we could design each of these in Figma or in another design tool, or do them in HTML. And we could build them out using that as a way to set up our templates in the style guide. We're not going to do that. Tony's not that dedicated today. So let's get something together. We got Claude. Let's just look at our budget for fun, because it's always good to make sure we're not blowing out our whole budget. We are at 0% used this week. Score. So we have all the tokens in the world, and we've used, that's fun, and 493,000 tokens. That's neat. Okay, we got a new context window. We're going to plan, because I want it to work it out with me first, and we're going to build individual pieces. I need to build components and add them to the style guide. I'm going to give you component ideas and basic styles. I probably should move this so you guys can read it. And you can help me structure them. Okay. Opus. I've got a basically unlimited token budget today. Let's just go with Opus. If you are doing a lot of dev, an 8-hour day, don't use Opus. But because I'm doing this an hour a week or so, I've got plenty of tokens to go by. It should be looking at your Claude.md first. So if we did look at these tasks and what it's doing in depth, it's looking through our Tailwind Laravel setup. It's going to the style guide root. It should be reading through our Claude.md as part of this flow. Right now, it's digging into our current context and it's saving that into Claude's future context so that it can use it without having to recheck the site over and over again. I want one session to capture all of this work so that I can summarize it and add it to our technical architecture documentation. Anything we can do to save time later. I don't want to have to say, hey, can you read through the whole site again and tell me how these are built? That just is a waste of tokens. If it has it all in context, we can use that context to generate a MD file. Okay, we're going to let it spin for just a sec. Okay, so we've got our first plan. It's already executed and given me some pieces here. Things that we want to do. So we have Blade is our templates, right? Blade is useful for creating those templates, but I want interactive templates. And it gives me that as a plan option. So when we're building this in the future, adding them with content, and using PHP to drive that content, we want them to be in Livewire. For the style guide, I'm going to do a little bit of a hybrid approach. So for the style guide, I want... Actually, we'll build Livewire for everything. I'm going to build it with Livewire, and we can populate the Livewire storybook. Storybook is a style guide. Apologies. That's what we use at my client. But We're not going to build with Storybook. It adds additional build complexity and is just not essential for this work. But in our style guide, we can have it build with the Livewire. So it uses Livewire to cause PHP to be more responsive and do things on the fly in the same kind of SPA type of treatment. We also want it to be using blade files as our templates. So we're going to do both. So it's going to do both of those things. Locked in. Static one, stay CSS partial blade markup. Let me record the scaffolding conventions. I need to build flickering kazoo. How do you want to proceed with the component list? You mentioned you'd give me ideas and basic styles. Send my list now. Go ahead, send me your components, ideas, and basic styles. I'll decide some CSS partial Livewire 4, map each to scaffolding patterns, and itemize them in the plan, then call exit plan mode for your final approval before you're ready to go. Okay, sounds great. So I've already set these up. I'm going to do I want a footer on the site. The site is mobile first. And the footer will only display on the mobile view. We may have a different footer for the full page view. The footer should be 4 nav buttons in a line. Home, map, favorites, profile. They should have some basic images, probably font, and be on have dark backgrounds to stand out against the light white color scheme. Please use the existing style guide for additional points of reference. So we're basically telling it not to go off the rails and do something crazy. And I don't have a font set for this. I wonder if it's going to go get me one. Pause for processing. Okay, so we gave it that, and it has a clear picture of what it wants to do. It's the profile pages, home, map, favorites aren't built yet. Dark black background, primary. This is based on our initial style guide, which is good. White labels with rings to focus, that's fine. Asking icons. So we have some options. I know people that love emojis, and that's a library all on its own that we could run. I think we're going to go with inline SVGs. They have the lightest load speed, and we want this to be performant as possible, especially because we're going to have images for each truck, theoretically. So that is going to lead to our page load overhead. So we're going to do that inline SVG. We have how should the footer be authored so it can be reused. We're going to do a anonymous blade component, mobile nav blade.php, and then it's going to set our X mobile nav in the templates, in the blade templates, and create a separate blade component for the footer. That is perfect. That's exactly what we want. Each button with the pound shows that it's hard-coded to home, no routing work. This is just for stubbing out the component. That is fine. So it's going to find some inline SVGs for us and establish what those are. It's going to set up a blade component, and that component is going to be pre-built to use Livewire. So it's going to create a new nav.css using BEM. BEM is base element modifier. That is a wonderful style. It means that it uses underscores to separate and nest our CSS, which is what we want. It's going to build a new mobile nav blade.php. It's going to add an import to the app.css, and it's going to build a addition to our style guide to add it. So accept plan. This is the entire plan. Placeholder, self-referencing hrefs, driven by an active prop so that it can be in a hover state. The footer is static. That's fine because we're not going to be updating that dynamically. Tokens with that dark color, and then visible ring around it when we hover, and that's our specifics for each implementation. So it's going to be building a nav.css, it's going to be building that mobile nav blade, style guides, insertion, and it's only going to be hitting those two. Okay. I know this is not the most exciting part of the process, but it's very important, especially if we want to understand how it's being built and be able to relay that information. Us understanding the plan and building a real working plan and not just saying, hey, go do it, is essential. And the fact that we are establishing this plan and technical documentation means that this is more of a AI assisted development and not quite that entire vibe code vibe. Allowed. All right, it looks like it is going to. Good, that's fine. It's going to go ahead and build that. What is it changed in? All right. So it's added my nav.css. It's created a nav CSS with our RGBs and things that are outside of our style guide. The things that are in the style guide, like the color accent mustard, are going to be added in a var call, which is great. That's Tailwind, not our regular Sass that I'm used to, but that's very understandable. It's going to add that mobile bottom nav and give it some base styling, and we can always adjust this. And then the actual blade component, and you can see it's got a lot of that blade syntax. This is our PHP Livewire hookup. So when we actually build this for production, it'll be more responsive and it'll use that Livewire to stand it up. And then frames our HTML in a very nice way. That's a cool little template. I haven't seen those before. All right. A reusable mobile bottom nav footer on style guide. So now, I don't know, since we're using Livewire, if it's going to show on the style guide right away or if we have to do a Lando Drush. Oh, good. There you go. How's that? So right now, these are not functional like it said. These are just going to be linked back to the home page. But for the style guide, this is what we're looking for. Actually, it looks pretty darn good and pretty close to our initial design. I like that for map better than an actual map anyway. Cool. All right. What's next? Want me to wire into the actual welcome page. I'm going to go back to plan. I want to add to plan out the next component. give me what you have. These are what I think you should have. Yeah, let's do... Whoa. Losing track of what I'm doing here. Okay. So let's collapse that plan and give them our next bit. So let's skip ahead to the header nav. I want to create a header nav component in the style guide. I want it to be one collapsible hamburger nav menu. Links can match the footer for now. We're still working through what will be in that. I want the left, the hamburger nav menu will be left aligned. Center aligned icon for street bites. TBD. Right aligned map pin. Another nav to the map, mirroring the footer nav, and a full width search bar with some placeholder text. Some notes. The collapsible can be a full height aligned center navigation. On mobile, it should be vertically and horizontally centered. I can't spell, that's okay. It knows I can't spell. The header should have the existing white background color and be positioned at the top of the mobile page. It may have a separate component version for the full screen page. Bam. Bam. We'll see how good my description is. I have a feeling Claude always says, "That sounds great." I wanted to once go, "Hey, what are you thinking?" But so far that's never happened. You can program your Claude agent, if you want a custom agent, to be sassy and to tell you when you're doing something dumb. I've seen those. But I think it's demoralizing, and I don't really want that. This one's more involved. Yes. What JS runtime is available for the toggle? Since the style guide is a standalone page, let me check. None. It is brand new. Brand spanking new. Okay, we'll let that spin. All right, it's spun. So it's, right now it has no JS. So it's going to say, what do we want to do? No JS runtime on the page. How would you open and close the interaction? Let's do Server round trip to open the menu. Yeah, it's not really necessary. Let's use Alpine. I don't know Alpine, but it says it's lightweight and usually ships with Livewire 4, so that all of our other bits should work well with Alpine. So let's go ahead and set up Alpine. So it should add that to our NPM, or maybe even Composer. So it sets it into our vendors and it should compile. So that's going to be a little bit more involved. Background, should the full screen overlay menu centered nav use? Color primary, white links, mustard active, mirrors the dark footer, bold brand statement, strong contrast. Yeah, I like that. They didn't give us that in our mock, so if we don't like it, we can always change it. It's not a big deal. I think I'd rather it be dark than be like mustard yellow or red, which are our other primaries in the style guide. Okay, it's spinning. Locked in. Alpine for the toggle, asphalt overlay, white links with mustard as active, nicely mirrors the dark footer, and it will give me a plan, and then we can review the plan. This one probably needs a little bit more scrutiny because we're dealing with some complex moving parts. We have not only the collapsing nav and an icon, which we haven't really set one yet. We also need to make sure that the search bar and those things are accounted for in the header. Wipe app header, pinned to the top, mirror footer, bar row, left hamburger, button, center, street bytes, word mark, just until we get a SVG. Search row, full width, input, search food trucks as a placeholder, hamburger menu, and installs Alpine.js, stated in app.js, so it has to add it there to inherit it, and global xcloak rule in the base CSS for future interactive components. Let's see. On run, it needs to add Alpine.js. That's a known expense. Pardon me. Overlay menu, header bar, menu links, search bar, and naming never hard code values. Yeah, I hear you there. Inline SVG, CSS partial for the import for a app.js, which is using Tailwind to build. That is fine. And we have to start Alpine. So we have to npm install, and then when we run, I wonder if it just sets that Alpine start into our run flow. Let's see what it does. Layer components, all BEM, again, base element modifier, which is great, and they use the right syntax. Man, AI is good at this. This is the kind of stuff that you sometimes have to go, hey, dev, junior dev, why is this not correct? Mobile search, position relative, and to do a new component so that we can place it everywhere that we need it. And mobile header. I wonder why. Oh, I got that's probably for the style guide. Okay. npm. I like it. Let's go. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is run Composer. Actually, it's npm. I lied. And they're going to run npm and then add that to inherit on the app.js. That might add to our build complexity just a hair, but if we use it, Claude, to help us build our GitHub actions, then it won't be a big deal. We're going to give it a second to spin. Okay, so just jumping back into the process here. Important things. We set up ESLint prettier for our JavaScript linters, and it's automatically going to run them because they're already in the Claude.md. It's going to all green. Everything came back nice. They all play well together. We've got a new component for the mobile header. We've got header.css to contain the styles. That's going into the base CSS. We're setting an X cloak so the menu never flashes before the load. So this is preventing ADA compliance. Says that we should not have any flashing, blinking, anything. It's going to load this first in PHP ahead of the actual implementing of the JavaScript, but we don't want it to blink when the JavaScript actually renders. So we don't want that Xcloak is exactly what we're looking for. That's what I'm trying to say. Wired it into app CSS so that it imports that logic. It's clean. It ran a lendo npm build. It ran JSLint. It ran pint to check our Laravel components and Composer stan to see that when we updated Composer it didn't break anything, and it should be live in the style guide. The links are matching the bottom, so they're going to be our self-referencing links. So let's see. That's pretty good. Let's look at our original design and we'll do some compare and contrast. Street Bytes is obviously going to be a logo. I think this is a little bit heavy anyway. I kind of like the lighter feel. It has that red hover state, so active state. So when we're on focus, that's going to display as red. That's very ADA compliant. I like that. I like the red hover state. It's going to take full screen, and when it's active, it's going to be mustard. And it even includes a closed CTA. Look at that. This is also available. Everything looks pretty good. Mobile only, pin to the top, hidden at greater than mid, I think. Hamburger brand and pin, and it all is good. Okay. Back to Claude. Want to assemble them into a real mobile page or shared layout next. Okay, let's do one more plan. So we've got header and footer. I want to plan mode. I want to modify the card component a bit. I want it to be a card with a rounded outline border. That's what I meant. And have one image of the food truck. I'll provide some default images. I'm going to change this language a little bit so it's an instead of one. An image of the food truck. I'll provide some default images later, followed by the title of the food truck and some, I don't know that I love the language that we had, but we'll just stick with it. Find now is fine for now. I'm saying, in addition, I want to add a slider component that can have many cards side by side and slide in a carousel and slide left to not against a slider JS library for this functionality, as long as it works well with Laravel and Livewire. Under that slider, I want to have a sliding CTA row where we can set filters, Mexican burgers, nachos, barbecue, etc. And have a card place for us to have filtered trucks under that. The filters and trucks can be its own separate component. All right, so this one's also going to be pretty complex. I'm asking for the sliders both in one because I want it to be aware that we're going to use that slider library in more than one place. That's a common issue, is it'll set up a slider JavaScript library like Slido, and when you scroll from left to right in one of them, it will also scroll left to right in the other one. That's what we don't want. As long as it's works with Laravel and Livewire and is ADA compliant. One of the big issues with this kind of reactivity in a site is you're not really giving mental space to the ADA community. So things like keyboard navigation are adding a level of complexity that it just isn't involved in a lot of those sliders. So we want to make sure that it includes that up front. I'm going to spell properly, and I'm going to let that run and see what it does. Go. Let's exit the plan until it comes up with a new plan. We're going to pause a hot second while it thinks. Okay, it looks like it's going to give us some additional context to answer, which is fine. I'm going to turn the light on. Hold on. That's better. Now I'm a well-lit developer. Okay, it's eating through tokens because this is a pretty complex one. If we do it right, this should all functionally work in the storyboard, in the style guide. I keep trying to switch to storybook, but we're not using storybook. Ideally, just like this one works in the style guide, we'll have the two separate components and reworking this food truck card in our style guide so that when we build it, we can just say combine all of these different pieces into the welcome page, and then we're done. If they're all built the way that I think they are, which we can confirm, we should have all of our components here, and then we have one home page, which will probably be this welcome blade, and the welcome blade will reference each of those components, and then all the logic for the component will be isolated into its component piece. Earlier I said that this nav was not static. It is static. This is something that for us to change it, we would have to change it in this file. The same with this header, but when it comes to the actual cards and the views, like we have that additional carousel view and things, they're probably going to build into a not static format. I want to see if it does that well on its own. So what mechanisms should drive your carousel card and scrollable filter flow? You said you're open to a JS library if it plays well with Livewire. CSS snap scroll, I know that one. Horizontal scroll with snap, 0 JS dependability, ADA compliant, keyboard screen native. Yeah. And I want to keep the existing card, or replace the existing card. What color should the find now CTA on each card use? Let's use mustard because that is the style that we initially had. and we can always change it. I'll be interested to see how many tokens I use in this. I'm making it work efficiently and cost it not efficiently by using Opus. Okay, it looks like it's done pre-planning. It's also updated the I need to build flickering kazoo. I don't know what that's about. I'm sure it's just its reference content. So we are, instead of using what was existing in the style guide, we're replacing it with this X food truck card, which is good. It is 3 components: the X food truck card, the X card carousel, which should have the X food truck card component nested in it. It's keyboard scrollable and ADA compliant, immune to livewire DOM morphing since it's pure CSS. It's even better. X truck filters, scrollable pill row, where we have Mexican burgers, nachos, barbecue tacos, other, with the Alpine driven active state. ARIA pressed, that is ADA compliant. ARIA is automatically ADA compliant, and that'll probably be what's setting our styles too. Updated card demo plus 2 new sections, one for the carousel with filters and a 2-column results grid for the cards. I didn't even tell it 2-column, it just knows. And I think that's fine. Slider mechanism, native CSS, no extra JavaScript. Card replacement, that's fine. Images, we'll take an image prop URL. So when we're ready to populate that, we can set an image prop and render it. I might just grab something off of Google just to, as like a demo. And tokens, no hex, we like that. Nice ADA compliant tap target. And CSS partial linter, blah, 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 blah. Food truck card is a nice base. Title and body are good elements. Card carousel, which should have, okay, flex with gap. Overflow X auto will allow it to scroll left and right. Scroll snap type X so that it automatically moves on a keyboard press. And card carousel filters is its own component, and it'll have CTAs in it. Filter pill, which is the button pill, that is good. Resources, view components, truck filters blade is the name of it. Added carousel.css because it's its own file. Added filters.css. And card carousel section. Filter. Yes. Go. Go do. Another upside of the plan process is because it's outlined its plan in advance, the actual time it takes to execute is much less. So the more that we plan into one plan, the more it doesn't have to self-reference. It has all of those bits in the same plan. Actually, if we look at the wider plan, if we go and take this into a markdown file, which we will, all of those are actually inside of its context right now. So it knows what pieces we're building. And then when we do build it into a main landing page, which is what it's going to ask me to do next, I guarantee it, we will be able to quickly implement. Let's track what it's doing in here. So it's built my card carousel. Card carousel has slots. Those slots are probably what's populating the cards. Let's see. So if I search for slot. Yes, so it's using Livewire to populate those slots, which is what we want. So when we are going through our Livewire route, it's going to capture those in PHP and place them into the slot, and then the slot will render into the blade. So that is great. Let's see what else we got here. Food truck card. Find now CTA, image href for the find now, which will probably point at the truck. I imagine we're going to have a truck landing page for each truck. I think if we click a card CTA, it'll go directly to that truck and it'll have its own map with a pin in it. That way we can display things like a menu and we can display all those other bits that we want. Articles ADA compliant, I like that. This image is probably going to need to be changed. I don't know that I'm going to change it right now, but ideally we might want that to be a different media type, maybe picture. I can't remember the name of it. We want to have one that is more compliant, and we want to make sure that the source is a WebP and that it is adjusted down in size, and that's probably something we need to do and create our own separate image blade. We'll see. So it is running npm run build, npm run lint.js, pint, real images, alt is name, object fit cover should fill the card. That's good. No image convention exists. I know that. The pills are visual only. When we have truck data, then that click active will have to be a live wire action, wire click. And that will be what drives the cards that display on the filter. Card width is set by the parent. That is fine. Fine. And I think we're done. So let's, oh, it didn't say, do you want to put it all together yet? That's okay. Let's look at the style guide and see where we are. Okay. So it's updated my food truck card. It's got nice rounded quarters, a place for an image, smoking wheels, barbecue. I made that up. And find now, I don't love this all caps, but I bet that's a pretty simple thing that we can change. Placeholder until the real photos land. Smoking wheels, taco libre. I like that. Burger block. The scroll is there, which is great. It's going to be hopefully ADA compliant if I... Yes. I like the hover state. I like... We might need to make the hover state on the CTAs stand out a little bit more globally. I don't think it's quite obvious enough. But we should be ARIA compliant. We have filters, driving results. This is not hooked up yet. This is just a demo, but should be side by side. And header and footer. I think that's good. So now I'd like to put it all together and have it in a welcome page. So the plan has been executed. Now we put all the parts together. Can you build me a new welcome page that is introducing all of these elements? Header, then we have the filters and filter listing, then we have the footer, and that should be all she wrote. Now, I could just build this myself. I imagine what it's going to do is on this welcome blade. After we get through the head into the body, it's going to add the header here. It looks like it already has. Okay, let's get started. No, this is... Yeah, this is the existing welcome that was set for Laravel. So it should replace these. Eventually, we're going to have a top nav here where the header is. I'm hoping that it's still under the header so that it's ADA compliant. And then we'll have our different bits here. So we'll have one for the carousel, and then we'll have a separate div for the actual... There we go. See, I was hoping it would do that. So we have outside of the head, we have the fixed mobile header. This is going to bring in that component. And then we have some styling around the main. Street eats near you. Fried fresh. I did not tell it to do that, but that's fine. We have a carousel of featured trucks. Each of these is inside the carousel, and they're each going to be given their card. So when we author these in our final state, I'm probably going to want this to be dynamic and populated by what's closest to that user using a SQL query, and then populate that. And we have similar for the filters. Right now the filters is only going to be set to all. We can filter it, but I think we need to add context there, which is what it was talking about earlier. So header, hero, I don't know that we need, but that's fine. Carousel, filters, listing, and footer. Main uses a 0.32 PB24 to clear the top, fix bottoms on the mobile. Land build clean. It does a call, look at Street Bytes Lando, and good. Okay. Want me to convert the filters listing into a working live fire component? We will do that later. Thank you very much. You got to respect your AI overlords. They're going to be ruling the world one day. Okay, let's see how it looks in real time. This is our style guide, but if we go to... Okay, now keep in mind, this is mobile, right? So when we go into non-mobile, it's expecting a new header that we're going to need to build. But for mobile, we've got our header. I guess that's fine. I think that's not going to take as much real estate as that when we're done. We'll update our links here when we get something better to put there. But we've got our left to right scroll, which matches the design. We've got our filters with the side-by-side trucks, even though I didn't ask for it. That's what I wanted, which is great. Those are all clickable. We probably need to change the color scheme a bit, but these are big fat buttons, so they're ADA compliant, which is nice. We've got our bottom nav, and the bottom nav has hover states. And right now it's set to home because it's obviously on the home. And I think that's good. If you want to test this locally, oop, what am I doing here? There we go. Losing my mind. I'm going to make this... I have a pixel, so I'm just going to pick pixel because I'm selfish that way. It'll look better once we set some content. And I don't love that it's forcing that initial padding to go away. So those are some bits that we can adjust. I don't know that I love the find now capital case, but in general, that's not that far apart. Let's look at the initial one more time and just do a side-by-side. I got the file here. So yes, We're not going for pixel perfect because this is just an AI generated, but that's not too far off. I like that it introduced our exit on this and made it a full screen centered. That's what I wanted. And honestly, this is a little bit too bold for me. This better. I think once we have images here, it'll be nicer. I also think we don't really need, we don't really need these dots. I know they're popular, but I don't particularly like them. We don't really need the headings. Maybe we just replace this with the horizontal bar. I also don't love that it's automatically dragging that all to the left, and I don't think that black is necessarily the right color there. But in general, it's looking pretty good. So we need some additional work, but I think that's enough for today. Thank you very much for sticking with me. I hope you appreciate what we're doing here. I hope you're following along at home. If you do have questions, comments, concerns, or you want to talk about this at length, I am available to do that. You can always send a comment into the YouTube channel. If you haven't followed this on the repo, you should go to the repo. We have a playlist to keep these in the future. Feel free to subscribe to that. And I'm Tony. Thank you so much. Have a great day.